Hey y'all, it's Natalie and I am guest designing for Wow Embossing today. So I'm using this gorgeous new trio called Ancient Orient. It's got Turkish coffee, vintage turquoise, and tarnished brass. And I'll throw a few more in there as well along the way. I'm working in my 6x8 flip book and I'm going to do a pocket page that I showed you just there. And then I'm going to do this outside the page protector page with a stencil. And so I'm going to use my blending brushes and use some Distress Oxides to do some ink blending. And then I'm going to throw in some heat embossing as well. So the page is kind of big because it is a flip book. And so you have to account for the gutter and the parts sticking out from the binding of the flip book. So I'm just decided to take my mountain range all the way across the page so that I didn't end up with any white space of the page that was still showing, instead of trying to be really careful about where I started and stopped it. I just decided to bring it all the way across the page. And this is in a Christmas mini album that I'm doing. This is a trip we took around Christmas time last year. But we also visited the mountains, so I thought that this would be a good way to include our mountain photos. That is Chip Sapphire, and then the other color is Tumbled Glass. And don't mind all the messy lines. It didn't get perfect, but I knew that I was pretty much going to cover everything up between the ink blending and the heat embossing. You'll see what I mean here in a moment. So I decided to get rid of that single white line between those two sections of the stencil. And now I'm going to work on first using the vintage turquoise. I have this cool little I don't even know what you call it, plastic piece that I'm using to as kind of like the stencil for the sharp line. So I use my Wow Embossing pen, and now I'm using a blending brush to apply the Wow Embossing ink to the rest of that rectangle. And we use that vintage turquoise, and it's so gorgeous. Now, I didn't plan this, but it worked out beautifully. So you can see where I got that Distress Oxide kind of outside of the rectangle. Well, it gave this really gorgeous ombre look when I put the turquoise powder on top, and I'm really happy with how that looks. It was like a happy accident. I didn't plan for that to look that way. I honestly thought that the powder would just cover up the ink, but it just instead gave this gorgeous ombre look, which I really love. So it's just kind of creating a sky background. I'm going to do another turquoise line down here, and I will create a little mask for the mountains so that I don't get the embossing ink in the area where they are standing, because I plan to emboss them with different colors. And I will link down below to the Wow Embossing websites, and I'm on their blog today with this layout. And I'm using that little dry paintbrush just to clean up any places where the powder stuck and I didn't want it to stick. So gorgeous, isn't that fun? I love the contrast between the heat embossed lines and then the Distress Oxide lines. And make sure that your Distress Oxide fully dries before you heat emboss, because it will also allow the powder to stick to it, and you probably don't want that. I don't. I love that little pen. It really allows for very definitive lines in this stencil, so I'm really happy with how that looks. And what you can see that I've done with the stencil is I've just flipped it to make the mountain range kind of the opposite direction on the other side of the page, since my stencil didn't make the entire length of the page. And I filled in the entire mountain range, the top one, with that ink, and I'm going in with the tarnished brass. This is the tarnished brass color. And you can see there were just a few spots at the tip of the mountains that I missed, so I will heat emboss this, and then I will go back over those missed spots with the pen and fill them in. And you can definitely layer up your embossing powder and it will work just fine. So this is going to be outside the page protector in my flip book, so it'll be a really fun, what's the word? Texture, a texture that you could touch when it's outside of the page protector. So now I'm going to go in with that pen to fill in the empty spaces. And I'm really happy with how this is turning out. That tarnished brass is a fun color. I'm definitely going to be using that one again. And this Ancient Orient trio is inspired by Gwen LaFleur. So now I'm going to do the bottom part of the mountains with the Distress Oxide. I'm using Rustic Wilderness, just that lovely green color. And I start using the stencil, but by the end of it, I probably just could have filled in the blank spaces without any stencil. Because when you get Distress Oxides onto your spaces that are already heat embossed, you can just wipe them away, which is really nice. So that's what I ended up doing. And I'm showing you, I'm going to use that Tim Holtz forest dye there to add trees at the bottom of it. So I'm just taking an entire panel of cardstock and putting heat embossing powder over the entire thing. And that is the Turkish coffee color that is from the Ancient Orient trio. And I'm going to heat emboss it and then use it to die cut those trees. You let your heat gun heat up a little bit first before you emboss it. But look at that. It's so satisfying to watch, right? It has this gorgeous sheen to it. Maybe like a bronze or gold sheen to it. Make sure that it dries completely or cools down completely before you die cut it. I also used Color Blend Verdigris and Sage, inspired by Catherine Pooler, embossing powders there on those green trees. So I'm just going to layer them up over my mountains and make sure that each of the panels covers the one before it. I'm going to do the same with the green. I really love that sage. It's like glittery, so that's really fun. Just cutting off the excess that's stuck around the side, and I'm going to use it again to make another row of trees. But first I'm going to use the same Rustic Wilderness to ink blend across the bottom, just so that I don't have any white space that the trees are not covering. And my title is going to go over this to kind of hide the ugly seams between the different colors of the trees. But I'm really happy with how that looks. And it really kind of looks a lot like one of the views. I'm also using this super fun stencil from Wow Embossing. And I'm just pressing the ink pad through it a little bit on the Distress Oxide portions of the page. And then I'm using the Catherine Pooler Disco Ball. It's like some really gorgeous iridescent glitter to make it look a little bit like maybe there's snow falling in those sections of the sky. So cute, and it's very sparkly but subtle. So the last thing I'm going to do is fill up this panel with White Puff Twinkle Wow Embossing Powder, which I think looks like snow. And I'm doing it, and it's just this really gorgeous. I was showing you I refilled my embossing ink pad. But it's really beautiful and subtle, because when you see the final, you might not be able to tell, but when you see it up close, it is glitter letters. So I'm going to, I zoomed in for you to see me heat emboss it for just a sec here. So it just puffs up like snow a little bit and glitter. So I used these wood grain dies that I have to cut the word winter. And I'm going to put them across the bottom, and then I'm going to use some Pink Fresh Studio Puffy Alphas to put in the Smokies. So the title is going to say Winter in the Smokies. And then I'm going to keep my pocket page really simple. I'm just going to put all the photos onto some wood grain embossed paper that I have. Not heat embossed, just regular embossed. And it gives a really lovely winter look. There was no snow though. I mean, it wasn't that much of a winter. But it goes in a Christmas album, so I went with it. So I use my Nuva adhesive to stick these down, especially since they're going to be outside the page protector. I want them to stick really well. And one of the colors actually really was close to the Rustic Wilderness and almost blended in a little too much, but I kind of like it. It's subtle. And then I also use that Nuva adhesive to glue down a few of the trees just because it is outside the page protector. I don't really want them being caught on anything and kind of pulled off or anything or ripped. So I wanted them to stick down a little bit more. And that's going to be it. I'm going to link down below with all of the Wow Embossing links. Find me on their blog today, and you can grab all these products in their store. They're such a great company, and I'm really excited to be guest designing for them this month. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe. Bye, y'all.